Incredible moment. Little girls touching plea to a U.S. Marine. Unveils an unexpected transformation. The diner buzzed with the familiar scent of bacon and burnt coffee, but for Sergeant Jake Miller, the noise faded into a restless background hum. Each swallow of his black coffee felt like swallowing back regrets. Back in his small Texas hometown, he'd traded the cacophony of gunfire for a world that felt eerily silent. At 32, battling internal demons etched deep during his service, he wore a mask of bravery that cracked at the edges. The laughter of his late father echoed like a lost melody in the creaky floorboards of their childhood home. But cracks in that foundation made it hard to feel the warmth of those memories. Instead, Jake was haunted by the ghosts of faces he could no longer see, but knew he'd scarred by his absence. His time in the Marine Corps had taught him hard lessons, but home felt like a different battlefield. Each step on the streets felt heavy, a physical reminder of the life he had left behind. Those who hadn't seen the trenches couldn't understand the abrupt transition, the weight of unmet expectations. Jake gazed out from his booth, watching the townsfolk fill their plates, their conversations buoyant with laughter. He was grateful for their joy, yet a shadow loomed over him, a reminder that beneath his sturdy exterior lay scars that were still fresh within. As he absent-mindedly swirled the last drops of coffee in his cup, a chirpy voice cut through his reverie. "Sergeant Miller!" Startled, Jake turned to see a 10-year-old girl bursting through the diner door. Lydia, the imaginative child living next door, radiated an effervescence that momentarily shielded him from doubt. Her eyes sparkled with an innocent belief in heroes, and their connection felt almost magnetic. "I'm Lydia. You need to show my class what a real hero looks like. I know you can inspire them." Jake's heart sank. The pressure of her gaze was electric but overwhelming. He felt like a fraud. How could he conjure inspiration when he was still grappling with his own self-worth? Doubt clawed at his insides. As she recounted her school project on overcoming challenges, Jake's mind raced with the familiar questions of inadequacy. Was he even the person he once was? Did he really have the right to step back into the light after what he'd been through? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet, her enthusiasm lit a tiny flicker of hope in him, and somehow, the time they spent together transformed into a lifeline. They signed up for the community college course she wanted him to take, and he found himself sharing his stories, a thread between their lives. As his confidence grew, so did Lydia's belief in him, slowly nudging him from the shadows of self-doubt. But just as things seemed brighter, darkness loomed ever closer. On the night of the town hall meeting, tension swirled like a storm cloud. Confrontation bubbled beneath the surface as townsfolk questioned what a Marine could truly achieve. Comments stung with ridicule. What value does he add? And Jake felt the familiar weight of shame grip his throat. The atmosphere crackled with hostility, and just as he decided to retreat into the shadows once more, that unyielding voice pierced through the murmur. "Please!" Lydia stood in the audience, her small frame trembling but her conviction unwavering. "Can't you see that every person has a story? We need to believe in each other." Her words surged into the crowd, amplifying the silence that spun around them. In that moment, Jake faced a paradox. Her cry for recognition echoed his own. Could he embrace vulnerability when everything seemed stacked against him? And in that split second, the air thick with unacknowledged fears, the questions that lingered would not relent. Would he step forward for her, or fade away into his own darkness once more? The stakes were dangerously high, and uncertainty churned as he battled the specter of what the future might hold. Would he find the strength to confront his past, or would fear dictate his next move? The moment hung suspended, asking Jake to take the plunge into a chasm of unknown possibility, or retreat back into isolation forever. The echo of Lydia's impassioned plea reverberated through Jake's mind like the aftermath of a grenade. For a fleeting moment, he wrestled internally, the tempest in his chest threatening to pull him apart. Standing before the crowd felt like stepping into enemy fire, a situation ripe with vulnerability and risk. What if he failed her? Or worse, what if he revealed too much of his wounded spirit? But in that moment, shards of clarity began to pierce the haze of dread. He had fought physical battles, often against insurmountable odds. The threat before him now wasn't one of bullets or blasts. It was the chance to redefine his purpose. Could he muster the courage to take a stand, not just against the judgments of the town, but against the demons that had plagued him since his return? With a deep breath, he stepped forward, the murmurs of the crowd fading into a blur. The stares were intense, some full of skepticism, others searching for validation. He felt Lydia's unwavering belief painting a bright beacon amidst the shadows of his mind. In those bright, innocent eyes, he saw not just a plea for inspiration but an invitation to rediscover himself. "Lydia is right," Jake started, his voice quaking slightly but gaining momentum. "Every one of us carries a story, a battle we've fought and wounds we've endured. What makes us heroes isn't the absence of scars, but how we choose to carry them." The mumbling grew quiet, each person grasping the gravity of his words. His resolve built as he recalled every moment of camaraderie, the laughter shared over campfires, and the tears shed for comrades lost. He felt the invisible weight of expectation, but for the first time in a long time, he began to understand that sharing his journey might allow him to begin healing, not just for himself, but for those around him. "What you see may be a soldier," he continued, "but inside me is a man just trying to find his way back. The real battle I face daily is learning to forgive myself." Jake could feel an unexpected warmth enveloping him as he spoke. The authenticity of that moment lifted a weight he hadn't even known he carried. Instead of retreating further into the shadows, he was standing boldly in the light, exposed, yet unyieldingly hopeful. As he finished, a ripple of murmured conversations ignited among the townsfolk. Some looked moved, while others still wore skepticism on their faces. But it was Lydia's face that shone brightest, her earlier confidence transformed into pride. She waved her hands as though drawing everyone's attention back to her engaging energy. A call for connection, an affirmation that they could indeed believe in each other. With their initial doubts lingering in the air, Jake faced the challenge head-on. What followed was unexpected. The atmosphere began shifting. Others in the audience stood up one by one to share moments of vulnerability, personal battles they faced, whispering confessions of their own fears and struggles. In those moments, Jake realized the participation of others in their own healing journeys was just as crucial as his own. Each story shared opened a window into their own struggles, proof that everyone wore a mask of some kind. Leaving the town hall that night, Jake felt lighter, as if the burdens were not just his alone. Their collective vulnerability began morphing into a shared strength, and he could almost taste the promise of redemption. But there were still echoes of doubt. Could this change be consistent, evolving beyond mere words? He could no longer hide behind the mask of a soldier. The challenge ahead was to cultivate this newfound connection and create real change, not just for himself, but for others who felt as lost as he once did. As he settled into his truck, he caught his worn reflection in the mirror. This wasn't the end of the story, merely a prologue to an even larger confrontation with his past. That night, as he navigated the quiet roads back home, Jake knew the time had come to face the truth he had avoided for too long. What does it mean to be whole again? Would he confront his darkest fears, or allow them to drown him once more? The answers waited just beyond dawn, rising like the uncertain sun. The morning light splashed through the curtains, pulling Jake from fragmented dreams filled with echoing voices and shadowy faces. He squinted at the sun streaming through the window, a clarion call to the battle awaiting him. What lay ahead was more than a choice to confront memories. It was an invitation to redefine his life, to wrestle with the jagged edges of his past that still stirred within him. Jake found himself pacing the kitchen, the brewing coffee serving as a lifeline amid thoughts that churned restlessly. He could still hear Lydia's voice, innocent yet resolute, urging him to embrace not just his strengths, but also his vulnerabilities. The faces of those who shared their stories flickered across his mind, adding weight to his resolve. "I can't do this half-heartedly," he muttered under his breath. The specter of repeated failures loomed large, reminding him of the previous engagements where he had masked his pain, choosing solitude over connection. This time felt different. The possibility of healing seemed tangible, but with it came the fear of inadequacy. As if responding to his internal turmoil, he grabbed a notepad and pen, driven by a sudden urge to articulate his thoughts before they slipped away into obscurity. Words flowed through his hand as he wrote about his battles, the guilt from his past, and the small victories that had accrued amidst persistent darkness. Each phrase was laced with both fear and a burgeoning hope that illuminated parts of himself he had long denied. With the sun now fully risen, illuminating his kitchen, he recognized a pressing need beyond the fear of personal revelation. He needed to foster a space where vulnerability was not only acceptable, but celebrated. He envisioned gathering those who had shared their pain, transforming private struggles into a communal strength. Yet doubt prickled at the edges of his mind. How could he facilitate this when he still felt so fractured? In that moment of reflection, Jake understood that facilitating change began with understanding himself. He returned to the notepad, writing down a list titled Goals. 4 simple aspirations formed the backbone of his burgeoning mission. 1. Organize a community circle to facilitate dialogue about struggles. 2. Share his story as a means of emphasizing the power of vulnerability. 3. Establish ongoing support for those seeking healing. 4. Recognize and embrace his own imperfections. He stared at the words, weighing their potential. This was no longer just a plan, it was a declaration. The gravity of what he needed to accomplish settled over him, and for the first time, the blend of trepidation and excitement didn't paralyze him. It ignited a fire within. No more sidestepping the past. He had to confront each aspect of himself. That meant reaching out to the townsfolk he had once seen from afar, especially Lydia. Interaction would be key. He picked up his phone, heart thudding in his chest as he prepared to text her. "Hey Lydia, can we meet? I want to talk about what we discussed at the town hall." He hit send, and a wave of uncertainty swept over him. What if she didn't respond positively? What if sharing his plan fell flat, deepening his insecurities? The phone buzzed almost immediately. Her reply was simple. "Absolutely. I can't wait to hear your ideas." A mixture of relief and anticipation washed over him. This was it, a chance to step into the unknown and ally with someone whose light had inspired him to forge ahead. In that moment, his vision began to crystallize. Community circles that fostered openness needed a leader who could present himself both as the soldier and as the man resolutely standing against his demons. As he readied himself for the day, his heart raced with adrenaline, and he felt a gleam of purpose within the chaos. He was no longer just a soldier with scarred memories. He was an architect of renewal, one who could forge connections through authentic shared pain. The drive to the coffee shop felt different, the road less like a path to confrontation and more like an avenue toward possibility. Yet even as hope surged within him, shadows lingered at the edges. He hadn't yet tasted the reality of what lay ahead, nor how his attempts to open up would be received. He parked and glanced in the rearview mirror, confronting the man staring back. There was a hesitation, a lingering doubt. He needed to push forward, but what if this trajectory brought forth undealt torments? Would he find the strength to maintain this newfound intention, or would fear cinch him back into isolation? As he stepped out of his truck, the cool air breathed life into his determination. Today marked not merely a conversation, but the genesis of what it meant to harness the chaos and create his path. Jake inhaled deeply, ready to dive headlong into the open terrain of connection. Yet, an unsettling thought pierced through. What if the very act of sharing these truths opened wounds he wasn't prepared to confront? The moment of truth loomed, waiting to reveal itself in the least expected yet most vulnerable of ways. Entering the coffee shop, Jake was immediately greeted by the warm, inviting scent of roasted beans, a subtle reminder of comfort in a world that often felt stark and cold. The soft murmur of conversations and the clinking of mugs created a reassuring backdrop. Yet the weight of his own impending conversation was enough to tether him momentarily in place. Lydia was already seated at a corner table, her bright smile cutting through his apprehension. As he approached, her eyes radiated encouragement, an unspoken affirmation that bolstered his resolve. Yet Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he was stepping onto a battlefield, armed with only his truth. "Hey, Jake, I'm so glad you're here," she said, gesturing for him to sit. Her enthusiasm was infectious, but within Jake's chest a storm brewed. Doubt clawed at him, whispering sinister reminders of past failures that had left scars deeper than he cared to admit. "Thanks for meeting me," he replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He took a moment to gather his thoughts. The notepad with his goals lingered in his mind, his guiding light in this pivotal moment. Lydia donned a probing expression. "So what did you want to share?" For a split second, Jake hesitated. A tiny voice inside screamed for him to retreat, to hide behind the walls of silence he had constructed over the years. But he quashed it, anchoring himself to the gravity of his mission. If he was going to embrace vulnerability, the time to act was now. "Right," he began, almost stumbling over the words. "I want to work on something that can help others, a safe space for sharing experiences and healing." Lydia leaned in, her attentiveness sweeping away some of his apprehension. "That sounds incredible. What do you have in mind?" He took a breath, the air filling his lungs with a combination of fear and exhilaration. "I want to organize a community circle, where people can talk about their struggles openly. Sharing can be powerful, and I think it could help us all heal." As he spoke, the momentum grounded him. He went on to share his list of goals, detailing each point and weaving in snippets of his own story. The heaviness of his past poured into the air between them, and he felt the tension ease slightly as Lydia nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I think that's an amazing idea," she said, her voice steady. "People need these spaces. They need connection, especially when life feels isolating." A flicker of hope ignited in Jake's chest, but the shadows of doubt still whispered insidiously. What if I can't pull it off? What if sharing this stuff only drags me back? What if it opens up wounds?" Lydia's expression softened. Empathy radiated from her. "But what if it doesn't? What if this is your chance to not only help others but to help yourself too?" Her question hung in the air, and Jake found himself contemplating it with an urgency that felt foreign, yet thrilling. Could this truly offer him a path toward healing? As he stared into the depths of her gaze, he realized there was potential in the very act of engaging his fears. To manifest change, he would need to confront the jagged edges of his past, not just for himself, but to model the courage he wished to see in others. "What if I'm not ready?" The words slipped out before he could censor them. "We never feel fully ready for these things," Lydia replied softly but firmly. "That's part of the journey. You don't have to have everything figured out. You just need to begin." In that moment, something shifted. Jake recognized that this was not just about his initiative. It was also an opportunity to redefine his own narrative. He could face the darkness, gather his narratives, and assemble them fragment by fragment into something coherent, something capable of shedding light. Yet, just as a sense of clarity began to settle, another unsettling thought flickered in his mind. What if his past failures were woven into him too tightly to be untangled? Were the narratives of victimization too entrenched for him to ever emerge as a guide for others? Jake opened his mouth, grappling with this inner conflict, ready to voice this latest revelation, but the words seemed to elude him. Instead, a text notification buzzed on the table, an unexpected message that instantaneously seized his attention. "Meet me at the old park at 3. I have something important to discuss." Jake's pulse quickened, fraying threads of reality and possibility, intertwining uneasily within him. Who could this be from, and what revelation awaited him there? Unbeknownst to him, answering this summons would lead him toward a confrontation that could redefine everything he believed about himself. Jake felt his heart race as he stared at the phone screen, uncertainty gnawing at him. Time hung like thick fog around him, and he glanced at Lydia, whose eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Who is it from?" she asked gently. I don't know, he stammered, the text a churning eddy of intrigue and apprehension that overwhelmed him. Conflicting thoughts battled for space in his mind. Should he ignore it? Was this meeting going to somehow upend the fragile confidence he had just built with Lydia? What if this is an important opportunity? Lydia's prompt felt like a lifeline cast into his turbulent sea of doubts. She was right. He had always held himself back out of fear. Maybe it was time to break the cycle. With a quick determination, he typed a response asking for further details. The feeling of vulnerability washed over him once more, yet there was an invigorating sense of empowerment in taking this step. Perhaps this was the universe's way of guiding his journey. Are you going? Lydia asked, watching him closely. Yeah, I think I should, Jake replied, feeling a spark of resolve ignite within him. I need to see what this is about. It might help me understand everything. Lydia smiled, and in that instant, he felt reassured. You're on a path, Jake. Trust your instincts. With parting words of encouragement, Jake left the coffee shop, the weight of the moment pressing against him like the fresh air that surrounded him outside. The old park was a familiar place, its paths lined with towering trees that had witnessed countless stories. But today he felt the weight of his own narrative poised for alteration. As he approached the park's entrance, time slowed. The rustle of leaves seemed to echo the whispers of his past, the moments he had once faced alone. He jogged the last few steps to the meeting spot, a small clearing enveloped by gentle sunlight. Then he saw her. A young girl, no older than 10, perched on a bench. Her expression a mix of need and unwavering resolve. The sight struck a chord with him. Her small frame was weighed down by something far larger than her age suggested. Jake? She asked tentatively, her voice fragile yet steady. Yeah, he replied gently, stepping closer. You sent me that message? She nodded, biting her lower lip. I really need your help. My mom, she's going through a hard time. I thought maybe you could talk to her. This request hit him like a wave, bringing the very core of his mission to the forefront. He had envisioned creating a supportive environment for adults, yet here was a child reaching out for healing in the most raw form. What makes you think I can help? He asked, battling the wave of uncertainty that surged within him. This wasn't a typical request. Helping adults was daunting enough. How could he possibly navigate the emotions of a child and her ailing mother? Because I heard what you want to do. I believe you can make things better, she answered with such earnestness that it momentarily silenced his inner critic. Her faith struck a nerve. It was the kind of belief that everyone sought at some point, the kind that altered perspectives and illuminated pathways that once felt obstructed. Jake inhaled deeply, searching for clarity. Okay, I'll help your mom. But I need you to tell me something first, he said, unsure yet determined. Why do you believe that sharing could help her? My dad used to say that when we tell our stories, we get less scared of them, she replied, her innocent wisdom echoing against the backdrop of his past struggles. In that moment, he realized it wasn't just about aiding her mother, it was about sharing narratives and confronting fears, an intricate dance between vulnerability and connection. Jake felt the pulse of purpose awaken within him, igniting something he thought had long flickered out. He looked into her earnest eyes, feeling the intensity of her plea unite with his emerging resolve. Let's do this together, he said, a newfound confidence surging through him. Yet as they began discussing how to approach her mother, another thought snaked into his mind. What if this encounter opened up his own wounds even further? Would he be ready to face the demons lurking in his past as he stepped into this role? The silence of the park enveloped them, leaving Jake teetering on the edge of a transformative journey, one that would test both his commitment and his growth. What awaited him in this new chapter was both exhilarating and terrifying, beckoning him to continue pushing the boundaries of his courage, even as shadows loomed ahead. Would he step into the light, or retreat back to the shadows that had long defined him? The warmth of the sun increased as Jake knelt beside the girl, feeling the weight of his newfound commitment settle on his shoulders. This wasn't just about offering support, it was a call to embrace vulnerability, something he had long avoided. The child's optimism contrasted sharply with the creeping doubts that clawed at his mind. What if I fail her? He wondered, grappling with the pressure of such an intimate responsibility. Okay, he said finally, trying to sound more assured than he felt. What's your mom's name? Her name is Clara. She used to be really happy, but now she cries a lot. It's like all the light just went out. The girl's brow furrowed, and Jake wondered how deeply her young heart had been scarred by her mother's struggles. In that moment, he found himself reflecting on his own past. He had always shied away from confrontation, buried his emotions, and allowed fear to dictate his actions. But here he was, instinctively stepping into the fray. Yet, what if confronting Clara would unearth his own buried feelings? Could he really provide the support she needed while risking his own emotional stability? Just then, as they spoke, the girl tugged on his sleeve. Will you come with me to see her? Please? He hesitated, grappling with the rush of emotions. As he looked into her pleading eyes, he resolved that this was bigger than his own insecurities. All right, let's go, he said, surprising even himself with his eagerness. They walked side by side, the little girl quietly directing him along a familiar path, each step echoing Jake's uncertainty about what awaited him at Clara's door. The air felt thick, almost electric, with questions swirling around in his mind. What if she rejected him? What if he found himself overwhelmed by their pain? Yet, he captured the intensity of the girl's faith as a lifeline to drag him forward. When they finally reached a modest apartment building, Jake felt his chest tighten. This was more than just a visit. It was a descent into vulnerability that could unravel him. Would he stand strong or succumb to fear? A deep breath ignited a flicker of determination. Can I ask you something? He queried as they stood outside the door. Yeah, she said softly. What do you think your mom needs to hear most? Her eyes widened, clearly caught off guard by the question. She needs someone to listen. She keeps yelling at me and says it's my fault for not making her happy. But I just want her to be okay. Just remember, you're not responsible for her happiness. It's okay to express what you feel too, you know. The truth of his words resonated even as he uttered them, illuminating a path he needed to follow himself. Can you help her feel better, Jake? She asked, hope bleeding into her tone. Yes, he finally answered, a firm resolve blooming in his chest. I'll do my best. With one last look shared between them, she pushed the door open, revealing a thin-lit space that felt heavy with unspoken words. Clara sat on the edge of the couch, her eyes clouded with fatigue and confusion. Jake suddenly felt as if he were staring into a mirror of his own past. Shadows he had fought to overcome darkened the room around them. Mom, this is Jake. He wants to talk to you. Please don't be mad, the girl said, her youthful voice shaking. Clara's haunted gaze shifted towards them, and for a fleeting moment, Jake felt the weight of two lives intertwining. The weight of a child's hope and a mother's despair crashing upon him. Could he do this? Could he break the cycle of silence and shame that had defined so many of his own interactions? The voice inside him was insistent, prodding him to take that first step into the murky waters of honesty and care. Clara, he began, his voice stronger than he felt. I'm here to listen. As the words left his mouth, a part of Jake ignited. This was a moment of truth, a challenge that would demand every ounce of his courage. What unfolded next would not only shape Clara's future, but could very well redefine his own burgeoning mission. Would he be able to navigate through the lives of two lost souls without losing himself in the process? The silence stretched around them, thick and pregnant with possibility, each second echoing with potential. Jake stood at the threshold, the tightness in his chest almost suffocating. The dimly lit room, with its worn furniture and displaced shadows, amplified his sense of urgency. Clara's eyes, dulled by fatigue, seemed to search for the strength she no longer had, while the girl's innocence bundled with expectation prodded him to break the silence. Please don't be mad. The little girl's voice, so fragile, echoed through the space between them. It made Jake's heart race, not just for the fear of Clara's possible rejection, but for the unexpected responsibility falling upon him. His instincts fought against his trepidation, compelling him to step closer. "Clara," he repeated, this time softer, more resolute. "I can't imagine what you're going through, but I want to help. I believe that you're not alone in this." His voice was tentative yet firm, a lifeline tossed in turbulent waters. As Clara glanced away, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes, Jake saw the faded remnants of the woman she once was. A mother, a friend, someone who had once carried joy in her heart. Would she understand the offering he was making? As if sensing his uncertainty, the little girl clutched her mother's hand, a silent plea to maintain this fragile connection. "What do you want?" Clara asked, her spine rigid against the weight of uncharted vulnerability. The acute sharpness of her words cut through the haze, eliciting a momentary retreat within Jake's mind. "I want to listen," he replied. "You're going through a lot right now and you don't have to face it alone." What was it about her pain that resonated so deeply? Was it because he, too, had felt the burden of despair, clinging to the edges of his own happiness while wrestling with the shadows of his past? The room was thick with tension, but Jake steeled himself, his gaze unwavering. "You deserve support, Clara. We all do." In those words, he felt a small shift within, a reminder that strength could emerge from the depths of vulnerability. He wasn't just here to be a voice, he was to actively participate, even if that meant revealing the scars he had long tried to hide. A flicker of recognition crossed Clara's face, a deep acknowledgement of his sincerity. "You think you can handle it?" she challenged, vulnerability tossed with hints of defiance. "It's messy. My life is messy." "Yes," Jake answered, the word heavier than he anticipated. "I'm here for it all. We all have our chaos." In sharing a piece of himself, he felt a sense of liberation. Perhaps it wasn't an explicit confession of past struggles, but the admission that their struggles need not define them was a step toward something profound. Tension shifted, and into that space came new possibilities. Clara sank into the couch, shuddering breaths escaping her lips, and looking at her daughter with an intensity that had been missing. The moment felt monumental. The weight of their collective burdens hovered, chanting for release. "What if I can't?" she whispered almost to herself. "That's all right," Jake encouraged, feeling determination course through him. "Start with one small thing. Just let it out." Could losing herself to this moment heal the fragments of her spirit? The unwavering belief he had in her sparked something within him, hope that eclipsed despair. He wondered how far he could take this fragile exchange. Would he truly connect with Clara's pain, or would he crash, submerged in shadows of his own? But he had come this far. There was no turning back. "Clara, I'll be here," he reassured, emphasizing his commitment. "Let's uncover these feelings together." His voice bore the weight of intention, an anchor amidst her storm. Yet beneath his determination lay a deeper struggle, a worry that the process could unravel the patchwork of his carefully constructed defenses. Could he really walk the line between helping another and confronting the very fears he had meticulously avoided? And as Clara's tears began to flow, a release he recognized as cathartic, Jake found himself oscillating between hope and worry, a newfound intensity igniting a question that lingered. What truths awaited them as they faced the fragile, painful depths of reality together? Behind the facade of emotional confrontation, a deeper revelation waited, poised to challenge the very essence of his journey. How would he reconcile his own hidden scars with Clara's turmoil? The moment was ripe with unspoken possibilities, each one poised to alter their intertwined fates. Jake felt the shift in the atmosphere as Clara's breath hitched. For a moment, there was a fragile stillness in the room, as though the air itself recognized the significance of what was unfolding. As he watched Clara's shuddering breath slow into something resembling steadiness, he understood that their connection was beginning to form, a delicate thread between two embroiled spirits. "Just let it out," he urged softly, willing her to take the leap. His own heart drummed fiercely against his ribcage, the urgency to act blending with an unsettling pang of fear. What if this opened a door he wasn't prepared to walk through? Would his own struggles seep through in the process, Clara's eyes fell, her fingers busy tracing patterns on the couch, but he could see the tumult brewing beneath her surface. Every shift in her posture resonated with a spectrum of emotions, and he yearned to peel back the layers constraining her. The little girl still clung to her mother, oblivious to the emotional storm, offering silent support in the form of innocent presence. Then Clara spoke, her voice a frayed whisper. "It's so hard. I can't even remember the last time I was happy." The rawness of her admission hit Jake like a deluge, flooding him with memories he had tucked away. How long had it been for him, too? The weight of despair can burrow deep. He realized they were navigating similar grounds of anguish, despite their individual contexts. "You were happy," he countered, instinctively drawing from a well of empathy. "You can find that again, but it starts with sharing what's inside." Each word felt heavy, layered with his own unresolved battles. Would sharing this become a mirror reflecting their mutual fragility, or was it a portal to healing? Clara looked up then, and their gazes locked. He sensed her decision materializing, the impending choice between continuing to retreat into herself or stepping forward, entwining hopes with honesty. She took a shuddering breath, drawing strength from the moment, and began to articulate her pain. "My husband, he left. I thought it would get easier, but it didn't. I thought I could take care of things." She stumbled through each word like a tightrope walker, balancing on the thin line of vulnerability. "It's like I've lost myself, Jake. I don't know who I am anymore." Jake leaned in, his thoughts racing. She was peeling back layers he had long shielded, amplifying his own turmoil. He wanted to offer her support, but the lingering shadows in his mind threatened to surface. How could he deliver comfort, while his own wounds festered just beneath the skin? "Clara, what if you're not just a survivor? What if you could be more?" His voice broke through the heaviness like a beacon amid fog. As he proposed the idea of rediscovery, it solidified within him, igniting a flicker of strength he hadn't anticipated. As Clara absorbed his words, a tremor of hope traced her features, a minuscule yet significant victory. "You think I could?" she asked, disbelief hanging in the air like an untamed echo. "Absolutely," Jake asserted, the rising flame of determination fueling his insistence. "We can explore this together. We can find ways to reclaim what was lost." The moment stretched between them, a fragile but unyielding bond building in the wake of shared heartache. But still, Jake felt a disquiet settle within. He could feel the weight of his own uncertainties, memories clawing at his mind with reminders of his past failures. He resisted the urge to retreat. Instead, he had to channel this unsettling energy into support. But as the conversation deepened, he felt the walls around his own fragility begin to erode. Offering sanctuary to Clara could also inadvertently expose his own demons. Was he strong enough to confront what lay buried beneath, or would opening himself up only invite chaos to blot out this fragile moment of connection? As Clara's light began to emerge from the depths of her despair, the stakes grew sharper for Jake. The moment became a crucible, a transformative energy zipping through the air. What would he discover about himself as he continued to provide for her? Among the reflections of vulnerability and strength, the narrative of his own journey was about to unfold further. Should he discuss the scars of his past, or risk losing the trust he had begun to build? Suddenly, the door to the unknown creaked open just a bit wider, revealing the potential for revelations that might challenge everything he thought he knew about himself. The question gnawed at him. Was he prepared to feel deeply, relinquishing the safety of distance for the sake of shared healing? The time had come to decide. Jake's thoughts spiraled as Clara's voice carried through the silence, wrapping around him like a thick fog. Was he truly willing to venture deeper into their intertwined vulnerability? He shifted in his seat, the weight of his own unhealed wounds pressing against his resolve. "Clara," he began, the words trembling on his lips. "Sharing doesn't just help you. It helps me too. We're not alone, even if it feels that way." She looked at him, eyes wide with uncertainty. Her internal battle was palpable, a storm reflected in the depths of her blue gaze. He could feel her hesitance, as if she was teetering on the edge of a precipice. It was a mirror of his own conflicting emotions. The urge to retreat became louder with every passing moment. As Clara forced a small smile, her lips quivered under the weight of a burgeoning hope. "Are you sure this is going to help? I have so much. I don't even know where to start." "Start with the present," he advised, almost reflexively. "What do you feel now? Right this second?" The question hung in the air, suspended between them. It felt both simple and profound, holding the potential to unravel her fears. She pulled in a breath, grounding herself in the here and now. "I feel scared, but also a little less heavy," Clara confessed, as if voicing her burden for the first time. "Fear has been my constant companion for so long." "Fear can be a cage," Jake replied softly, aware that his own past bore witness to the same truth. "But if we face it, it can also be a teacher." Each word surfaced from the understanding that only he had gleaned through bitter experience. Still, asserting such lessons felt precarious. He could see her processing, measuring her next steps against internal hesitations. The little girl stirred in Clara's lap, shifting her weight, serving as an anchor amid the swirling emotions. Jake wondered if he could find his own steady ground, too. "What do you mean, a teacher?" Clara asked, curiosity threading through her confusion. Jake straightened, brushing a hand through his hair, wrestling with his impulse to retreat. "I mean it forces us to confront what we hide even from ourselves. Fear represents the areas in our life that need our attention the most." As he spoke, he felt the edges of his own fears come into sharper focus. Were they surrounding Clara as well, or were they now sharing a larger space filled with their individual struggles? In the last few moments, he realized he had been gifted a rare opportunity to occupy this emotional landscape. "What if," Jake continued, finding his voice, "we use this fear as motivation? What if we channeled our pain into purpose?" Clara's brow furrowed, and he could see the gears turning in her mind. "You're suggesting, what do you think we should do?" "We begin the recreation of ourselves," he proposed, allowing the words to roll off his tongue. "For you, perhaps that means organizing your feelings about your husband. For me, it might mean revisiting the memories I buried deep." There was a moment of silence as they absorbed this idea. The prospect felt liberating yet suffocating, the weight of expectation slipping in, demanding accountability. Would they be prepared to face the consequences of this new resolve? Jake watched as Clara's shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension ebbing like a receding tide. The flicker of hope rekindled inside him as they met each other's gaze. "Maybe," she said slowly, "we could set small goals. Little steps." "Exactly," Jake responded, emboldened by the conviction settling within him. "Small steps can lead to big changes." He decided then that they would both walk this path together. They could nurture change in one another, even if it meant confronting the darkness lurking in their pasts. But his heart tightened again when a realization hit him. What would happen when they finally unraveled the secrets hiding in each of their histories? Could the unfolding story lead to redemption, or would it expose them to vulnerability that tore their fragile bond apart? As the weight of this contemplation hung between them, the path forward became clearer yet daunting. The air resonated with unresolved questions, and Jake recognized that the coming days would test the very fabric of who they both were. Clara's next words hung in the air like the challenge they had just set for themselves. What if we could transform that fear into something powerful? Digging deeper inside, Jake felt a visceral pull. This wasn't just about healing Clara anymore. It was about rediscovery for both of them. The thrill of potential reverberated through him. But would they dare to embrace the intensity of this shared journey? As the days turned into weeks, Jake and Clara found themselves entwined in a transformative process. Their small ambition to confront their fears burgeoned into something deeper. In the wake of vulnerability, they began to unravel their stories, piece by piece, as if reassembling a shattered glass sculpture, a fragile masterpiece in its own right, imbued with the weight of hope and healing. Jake watched Clara blossom before his eyes, her confidence percolating through shared conversations and honest exchanges. Each session felt like a victory, not just for her, but for him too. Transforming into a calm anchor, he recognized that listening was as powerful as speaking. It nurtured their budding friendship and illuminated a shared sense of purpose that both craved. Clara's smile grew steadier with each conversation. She started integrating self-care rituals into her life, reclaiming fragments of joy she thought were lost forever. "I made cookies for the first time in ages," she shared one afternoon, her eyes glinting with excitement. "It felt good. I felt good." The pitter-patter of childhood laughter echoed through their sessions, her little girl often chiming in, turning daunting conversations into playful instances of warmth. For Jake, the metamorphosis was equally profound. He found himself recounting snippets of his life that he had long locked away, each anecdote just as potent as the life lessons bubbling beneath their surfaces. He spoke about overcoming his internal battles, weaving in threads of connection that linked his experiences with Clara's struggles. As he revealed these stories, it became evident that his purpose extended beyond supporting Clara. It was rooted in his own healing. One evening, as the sun painted the sky with vibrant oranges and purples, Jake summoned the courage to extend their initiative beyond themselves. "We should create a community gathering," he suggested, enthusiasm mingled with apprehension. "A circle where people can come together and share." Clara's eyes lit up, reflecting the potential they both envisioned. "Yes, a safe space for everyone to talk. We need to invite others who might feel as lost as we did." With newfound vigor, they set to work, reaching out through social media and their small town's notice boards, strengthening the nascent bond they had forged. The first gathering arrived faster than expected, and nerves crept in as Jake prepared the room. A local community center, modest but filled with warmth. The familiar scent of fresh coffee mingled with the inviting chatter, a backdrop that amplified their shared dream into reality. He could see Clara pacing, small jitters fracturing her composed facade. "What if no one shows up?" she fretted, her lips pursed with concern. "Then it's just us," he replied, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll share together, and that's enough." The light in her eyes tempered as she absorbed his words, slowly allowing hope to hold its place. The moment the door opened, a trickle of smiling faces flooded in, bundled in misgivings and anticipatory glances. Each story they shared resembled their own, a tapestry woven from fragments of pain and perseverance. As the words flowed, Jake recognized the significance of their collective vulnerability, his heart swelling with a sense of belonging that echoed particularly sincere. Their dialogue spiraled like a river, each testimony building upon the other, creating tributaries of understanding and acceptance. Multiple voices wove a safety net that caught each participant and held them close, even as they revealed the edges of their scars. In that vibrant room, Jake felt affirmed, validated as he and Clara, at the epicenter of this transformative experience, became pillars of aspiration. Tonight, he stood among them not as a soldier haunted by his past, but as a man who had faced his fears head-on. Their journey wasn't merely about confronting individual battles, it was about empowering one another towards reclamation, growth, and resilience. As the gathering drew to a close, Clara wrapped her arms around Jake, tears of resilience pooling in her eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you," she murmured, the intensity of her gratitude reflecting the truth she had discovered through their shared path. Jake smiled, a calm assurance settling into his chest. "This is just the beginning. Together we can draw strength from our stories and ignite purpose in others." Clarity washed over him as he realized that each step they had taken pushed away the shadows, illuminating a path previously obscured by fear. They had forged a safe space, not merely for themselves, but for a community often overshadowed by silence. In those moments, Jake understood he had transformed. No longer defined by past pain, he emerged as a guide, a beacon for others grappling with their hidden scars. Clara, too, had become a warrior, harnessing her narrative strength to inspire courage in those around her. As he left the gathering, Jake glanced back at the vibrant energy of the room. Hope hung thick in the air, and within him, he felt a sense of profound purpose materialize, an accomplishment born from the ashes of despair. This was the moment he had sought to build all along, an authentic connection with both himself and others. Reflecting on their journey together, Jake recognized the importance of embracing vulnerability. Through each shared narrative, they had all unveiled their hidden strengths. In relinquishing silent fear, they enriched one another's lives with authenticity and resolve. Beneath the glow of streetlights on the quiet drive back home, he marveled at how far he had come. He had conquered his demons and shown up, not just for Clara, but for himself. What sparked in him now was a newfound confidence rooted in unconditional acceptance, deep satisfaction emanating from within. You need to subscribe now to witness the unfolding stories of personal transformation. This is the moment to show your support for heartfelt journeys that exhibit resilience and hope. Leave a like now. You're feeding the algorithm that allows these important narratives to reach more souls. Comment your reactions and theories about the incredible growth we witnessed. And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to see how vulnerability can become strength. Your support defines this community of overcoming stories.